I've just started the recording. So my name is Harry. I'm the head of Global Specialist Services here at CiC. Hopefully some of you have seen me before because you've been to these other presentations, but if you're new here, welcome. As I said, what this is going to be is a bit more of a discussion really about a topic that's coming up really frequently for us. It's a casual session, but there's quite a few of us. So please do make sure you keep yourself on mute. If you've got a question at any point, just type it in the chat. I'll put a little hi message in the chat so that it pops up for you. Please do use that to speak to me, ask questions, make comments, chat to each other, because I'm going to be asking lots of questions that I'd love to hear your responses to in this. As I said, this is a topic that's pretty close to my heart at the moment, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on it because it will inform a lot of the work that I do for the next few months. If you haven't used WebEx before, you'll see in the chat it says to everyone when you write a message. You can also select my name from that list, so you can just say to Harry Key. If you send me a message privately like that, I'll answer your question, but I won't say anything that would identify you. I'll be the only one that sees the message, I'll be the only one that sees your name, and I won't do anything that would identify you. So you can ask a bit more privately or a bit more confidential stuff that way. Especially when we're talking around things around mental health, I think it's important we get a chance to do that privately. So without further ado, let's get started. Let's have a look at what we're looking at today. What I'm really interested in is what are the changes that we're seeing with remote working. I'm not just talking about the negatives, I'm talking about the positives here as well. And I had a few conversations over the past month or so with lots of customers, and I was asking what are the biggest effects that they're starting to see are. People noted changes in flexibility. Some people finding that really positive, finding that they have more time on their hands to do more stuff personally or more time on their hands to do stuff professionally. And I think that was a really interesting point of view, is that, you know, this can be a positive or negative thing, the flexibility, because also I can feel like I'm swimming a bit too much, like I don't have enough certainty going on in my life. It changes our professional communication. You are seeing me only on a screen. In a perfect world, we'd be seeing each other in person. What does that change about our communication? As I said at the beginning, please do let me know your thoughts on any of these. I've just put these as general topics. If you've got experiences or real examples of these kind of changes going on, I'd be really interested in hearing them. Our social relationships in the workplace have changed. I don't get to see my colleagues in the same way that I used to. When I was in the office, I'd be a meter from a couple of people. They're not necessarily the people I've chosen to sit next to for hours and hours a day, but at least I have a community around me, and I can reach out for support. Collaborative working then changes as well. I'm not having those kind of conversations I would have had in the office before when I'm doing collaborative working. We're using so many what we call co-working or collaborative working tools these days that are all programs that try and replicate as much as possible human contact. Our boundaries, of course, have changed a lot at the moment. For some people, they've taken that responsibility of setting boundaries themselves really well. They've been able to set really strong, good boundaries and find some positives with remote working. For other people, particularly those of us that didn't expect this change or don't like it, the boundaries can be really difficult, and that can really start to hurt us over time. We've seen a much larger increase in people talking about high levels of stress and people really pushing the that edge of burnout, really, just because the boundaries are not there. Our motivation and morale. One of the conversations I had last week was someone saying that they just do not feel that they have the same motivation to get their work done, not necessarily because they're not surrounded by other people watching them work, but because they just don't feel like it has a point as much anymore. Our productivity changes. Our mental health can be perhaps positively or negatively affected by this. And our physical health as well. You know, we're not moving around so much if we're remote working and we're locked down because of the virus. There's an accountability change as well. And sometimes we have to think as well about the change it's having on our customer relationships. For those of us that work in customer facing roles, I think of myself in this. You know, normally I get to meet people, I get to be in front of them and have a different kind of engagement. So please do type out your message in the chat and let me know what you think about any of these topics. I'm going to go into a few of them in some more detail, and I'm really going to ask you some questions around what you see happening at the moment and try and give some tools and tips around what I understand is best practice at the moment. So the first major topic I wanted to say is kind of, what do people think? There was a really big survey last year that was done by LinkedIn. I think they're going to repeat it again this year too. And it talked about what leaders think around coming back to the office, or what they're concerned about with remote working. And I thought some of the questions that they asked were really, really interesting. I wasn't so keen on some of the results, but the questions were good, so I thought I'd share them here. Do you guys feel, and let me know in the chat, either publicly or privately, will you feel resistant to going back to offices as they reopen? How are you going to feel when we start going back to that louder way of life again, being around other people, being in public areas? A couple of people saying yes privately and a couple of people saying yes publicly. Um, Kimberly said won't be the same as before. Yeah, so well, maybe you could say a little bit more about that. That's interesting, Kimberly. What do you feel will have changed? Because yes, we'll be able to have conversations as a team or as an organization about what's changed. But what's really important is what's changing for us personally. What do we feel? What do we as individuals think? Charlotte says, not looking forward to the open plan office noise. Yeah. Antonia says, I feel it's safe. I'm looking forward to it, but it depends on how I feel about safety. Yeah, absolutely. I can't predict how I'm going to feel in a couple of months' time about going back to it. A couple of people giving some really important private messages here. Definitely resistant. I'm an introvert. I like this way of working. So there are some people within this who have found a real positivity because it's allowed them to work in a way that working around other people doesn't normally suit. Melissa said, my disability is much easier to manage now I'm working from home, and I was always told working from home wasn't possible for my role. Yes, so many people I've spoken to recently who said, I've been fighting and fighting for a long, long time with my organization to be allowed to work from home, and now all of a sudden I have to, and it's okay and it's nice and easy. Someone saying, Kimberly, not everyone will be in the office at the same time, likely as reduced office space. That's going to change our interactions too. Guys, thank you so much for all these comments. They're really, really brilliant. Someone saying privately, I feel resistant to going back full time. A balance between office and working from home would be great. I think that's what many are looking for. How about the next question here? Has company culture been impacted due to remote working? How do you feel in the culture of your organization? Do things feel more accepting or less accepting? Do things feel more happy or less happy? What happens around our culture? Someone's saying here, less risk is addressed. We used to have 30 people in the same room. Yeah. It's going to be really difficult to get back out there, and loads of people are really, really missing it. I'm hearing here, really, really missing that interaction. So we know that there's something really positive about being back in the office, but because of the facts of the pandemic, we can feel scared and worried about it. We're going to have conversations about this. These are not things that we're going to just have implicitly go back and slip back to normal. So I encourage anyone in an organization to start having these conversations now, because the sooner we start talking about it, and that's not going to come as a surprise speaking to a psychotherapist, I do think talking about things is a really positive thing, but the sooner we start talking about it, the more we can be involved in that conversation, rather than feeling the power is happening over here and people are just telling us what to do. Someone saying privately, not looking forward to the commute again. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not looking forward to that too. Although my office has since moved during the pandemic. I haven't visited the new office, but it's much closer to my home. So I'm a bit happy about that and looking forward to a shorter commute. Someone saying privately, I think we're all working from home, so it's a little different, but we might need to expect some people are going to be having a difficulty returning. Someone saying here about the culture, I think a lot of people got shut out of conversations because they weren't in the meeting and so felt shut away and unseen behind their screens. But this has been raised and people are addressing it. Brilliant. We need to be raising these issues around culture. Culture seems more relaxed to someone here speaking to me privately, less focus on presenteeism. So for those of you who don't know that phrase, presenteeism, that's someone who's coming to work but really should be kind of absent. There's something going on, they're unwell. That's a really good point. Someone here says privately, I meet with my team daily initially working from home. Now it's 3 times a week. We do virtual quizzes and many more social things, which has really helped team morale. I'm going to touch on those social things a little bit later. Thank you for that one. Um, Claire Bowers says, I think we've heard more from senior leaders and it's in a more informal way, such as via video updates, than if we were in the office. We may not have heard from them. Yeah, that's really true. And Charlotte agreed that that's an improvement. Lots of people agreeing with that. So there could be more communication going on from senior leaders to junior staff, which feels really involved. Um, are we concerned about our mental and physical health? Who here has felt a decline in their mental health or their physical health? Is there a particular change that's happened that makes you put your finger on that? And then finally, do we have the flexibility we need and are we using it correctly? I know I've got more flexibility, but I know at times I don't use that flexibility correctly. Instead of using it to be more in charge, I use it just to work longer hours some days, and that hurts me over time. It changes my mood. I start to feel less motivated to work because I'm annoyed that I've been working long hours. But really, I've only got myself to blame because I haven't taken advantage of the flexibility. Kimberly says, I love the flexibility, but can guilt trip me into working longer? There we go. I think we're in the same boat there, Kimberly. Anna says, currently wearing a wrist support and made a standing desk out of my ironing board. Live in a small studio with no real desk. Can't tell if you're saying that's a good thing or a bad thing, but if you're wearing a wrist support, maybe that's something that's changed over the time of the pandemic. Spending more time typing and on computers is bad for us. We're not designed for this kind of thing. Someone's saying privately, I'm in many more meetings now than before. I feel that one. I can put my hand up to that as well, because it's not possible just to have ad hoc chats with people. I can't just turn around to my colleague that usually sits behind me. I have to arrange a meeting. That's a really good point. Everything has to be done by a formal meeting set up online. Yeah. And someone's saying privately here, I definitely move less during the working day at home. At the office, I'd have to walk around and speak to people and up and down stairs for things. Guys, thank you so much for this interactivity. It's really, really important to these sessions. I can see answers that are talking about pretty much all of the themes that we set out here: the flexibility, the communication, the boundaries, our motivation, our mental health, and our physical health, and our accountability and customer relationships. I haven't heard a lot about customer relationships, so if anyone's got anything on that, I'd be interested to hear as well. Alexandra finally here says, I find it hard to disconnect and relax after work. I don't think you're alone in that at all, Alexandra. And I've started to suffer eye strain, she says, due to more screen time during but also after work. Yeah, we're working on a screen all day, and then what are we doing to relax? We can't go outside and exercise, or we can't do a lot of things that we'd like to do, so we just sit in front of another screen. Sarah, however, said, my physical health is probably better as I have more time to exercise and I drive less. Mental health probably worse as I don't interact with people as much. That's a really nice, succinct answer. So I wanted to break this down into a couple of the other little topics. Please do keep your comments and questions coming. I'd love to hear them. So our communication challenges start with technology. The technology that we use is incredibly powerful, but it has its limits. It can't replicate everything. In fact, sometimes it changes things in a way that kind of ruins them, in my experience. We have to kind of minimize the amount of technology we're using, yet it's the only way we can interact with people. So it's real difficult finding that balance. And I really suggest that teams, if you're in a team of, I'd say less than 15 people, get together and have a conversation about what communication suits you as a team. So many teams within organizations have just slipped into whatever the whole organization is doing or whatever tools are available and are not thinking about bespoking or tailoring the communication of their team to the people in it and the work that they're doing. So I really think communication around communication is important. Someone saying here can come across abrupt on Teams Instant Messenger, where in real life the comment would be fine. Yeah, I say this in my private therapy practice a lot. I can send an email to someone with some very simple information, but depending on what mood they're in or what mood they think I'm in, that message can be read in 1,000 different ways. If you send me an email right now, I'll read it with hopefully a positive attitude. I really enjoy doing these sessions. I'm feeling quite happy and high on this, so I'm probably going to see quite a lot of positivity in that message. If you sent it to me yesterday morning, when I was having a bit of a grumpy morning, I might have read that message in a very different way. That's a really good point there. And someone saying privately here, it can be tough to distinguish between mental and physical tiredness at times. I started a new role which is mentally tiring or challenging, but I'm still lying awake sometimes as I'm forgetting to exercise within that tired mental space. Yeah, that's a really important point. I think you've put that really well. Thank you. And so back to the communications challenges, our meetings are different online. What can we do and what can't we do in a meeting? Would an email suffice? Sometimes we're ending up in an hour-long meeting where the aims or the goals of it seem quite ethereal, they don't seem very real, and we can actually be wasting our time or using our time inappropriately. So try and think about, do I need a meeting for this, or can I email someone first? What I found really helps me at the moment is starting a conversation over email and not mentioning the idea of meeting. Just asking a couple of questions, seeing what comes back. If what comes back is really complex, then probably I do need a meeting about it. If what comes back is simple and I've just got a couple of questions about it, I can respond on email. So try thinking about that first. Someone here said privately, in large team meetings, everyone bar the person speaking has their camera off. Thankfully, not in our ones, and lots of you have got your cameras on. I really appreciate that. Please do stay on camera if you feel comfortable. I quite like it. It's nice for me to see some faces. Maybe that's a bit selfish. This has made it much easier to be distracted and not fully listen, something you wouldn't be able to do in an in-person meeting. I now keep my camera on in meetings where I could otherwise get distracted. Yeah, it helps me to keep my camera on because I have to engage then. I have to be in the meeting. I think it's tough as well because we're asking people to be on camera for hours and hours and hours, and that really gets to us after a while. So I think shortening meetings can be a really positive thing at the moment, and I think we need to think carefully about that. Someone here said privately, a lot of deaf people find tone indicators very useful in video captions, e.g. /s to indicate sarcasm and /lh to indicate lightheartedness. This could be useful in Teams messages, but unfortunately they're not widely known about. Yeah, I see a lot of those kind of indicators on communication online, on forums and stuff like that. That's a great idea. Introducing that to your organization can really help people understand the tone of your messages you're giving. Thank you for sharing that from a deaf person's perspective as well. Anna says, due to the colleagues' network problems, we've had to turn videos off, which is a shame. Yeah, sometimes we can't afford bandwidth-wise to have video. Thank you guys for all of this interaction. I really appreciate it. How about having no breaks? I've had plenty of days and I've spoken to so many people over the past couple of months who have said, sorry, I'm a bit late. I've been in back-to-back meetings since 8 this morning, 9 this morning, whenever it was. And I'm speaking to them at 4 p.m. If someone's in back-to-back meetings from 9 in the morning till 4 p.m. in the afternoon, where is their space to think? Where is their space to do their work if all they're doing is talking all day and a lot of that talk goes nowhere? It can feel really unproductive. It can feel very, well, it affects my morale massively because I feel like all I'm doing is stuff for other things. I feel like I'm just performing for other people. I'm not actually getting my work done. Someone else has said privately, having camera on when you dislike your appearance is very challenging at times. Absolutely. This is something that not many people mention. I really appreciate you mentioning this. If I'm feeling down on myself and I have to see other people can see me all the time, that can feel really difficult. And what I know is people aren't seeing the real me online. They're just seeing a flat version of me. And this is where I come to my final point here, something that I've coined the term flat communications. Yes, we've got all these great networking and communication tools, but they're flat. Look, you can't feel me coming at you. This is a 2D representation of me. You get a little bit of a kind of torso view of me, but you don't get my body language. You don't get the feeling of being in a room with me and understanding how I might feel about the conversation. And that's really important. Someone's saying privately here, organizations should limit lunch and learn or brown bag lunches. This takes away from staff's ability to get away from work and have a long break. But I think anything mandatory around lunchtime is a failure. We know we need to eat meals at regular times. I'm going to talk about this in a minute. So if we're putting stuff in people's lunch breaks and expecting them to be on camera, I don't want to eat on camera. It's not pretty, especially when I haven't got a lot of time. I'm probably rushing it down a little bit. So yeah, thank you for that. So yeah, these flat communications, yes, I can hear and see you all, but do I understand you all? Do I feel you all? What communication do I miss online? So think carefully about sometimes a phone call might be better than an online meeting. And I'll tell you why. It's because we have been doing phone calls for much, much longer. We know how to look after ourselves and other people in phone calls. We know how to display our agreement or disagreement with things. We are more forced to use verbal cues for our feelings, more forced to use verbal cues for our body language, than when we're on camera and we can feel that we can just sit still. So it's really important that sometimes we try and use some of these older tools as well, because they do work well. Um, Someone's Beth saying feedback is so important to speaking. There's almost never not a delay to reactions via video call. Yeah, things take longer because I have to wait for people's reactions. Someone saying privately here, I book meetings with myself to keep time for myself and allow for breaks. It doesn't always work that way, um, when the phone or Teams call. Yeah, good point. But yes, put in stuff, book time out in your working day for non-meeting time, Claire says, really useful. Someone saying here privately, as well as meat-free Mondays, can we do meat-free Monday? Or some, that's MEAT-free Mondays, which is a bit of a thing at the moment. Can we do meeting-free Mondays as well, or some other day of the week? I've spoken to a few organisations at the moment that are encouraging quiet times, usually on a Friday, where there's just going to be no meetings put in place, so people can work on projects, so they can have social interaction with each other as well. Charlotte says, it's very hard running meetings when everyone has their camera off. It feels like you're talking to yourself. Hey, I know that feeling, Charlotte, and doesn't encourage interaction. I also sometimes would prefer not to be seen. In the office, an in-person meeting, I would be seen. I like Claire's tip. Oh yeah, Claire's tip was a good one as well. Yeah, book time out in your working day for non-meeting time. Yeah. When people enter a rough patch with their disability or mental health, someone's saying privately, hygiene is often the first thing to go. Sometimes a video call can be embarrassing if your personal hygiene or the tidiness of the room you're in is deteriorating. I cleared up my room before this presentation. It's looking all right, but it's not perfect. Most of the stuff is just shoved over there where you can't see it. I feel that very personally. Yeah. This is really, really interesting conversation, guys. Someone's saying here, their organization is meant to have meeting-free Fridays, but a lot of the COs are really good about it. I'm not sure what COs are, but less well known around the rest of the federation, it seems. So if you've, oh, thank you, COs, country offices. Cheers, mate. Yes, so it's something that an organization's doing. It must be communicated from the top and it must be understood by everyone in the organization. There's no sense in putting stuff in place that not everyone can use. Someone's saying privately here, a point that I find really important at the moment. This can be challenging to engage with colleagues with childcare responsibility. They often only have 2 or 3 hours a day where they can actually interact with people, and most of the time their childcare is taking up 2 or 3 hours a day, which can be quite challenging, especially when you have high workload and deadlines. That is challenging from both perspectives. It's really, really tough to be remotely working when you've got children around, particularly now when schools are not sure or opening or closing all the time. That throws a huge amount of disarray into your life, and we'll talk about that in a little bit actually. So think carefully. Have I got space in my day? And start small. Don't try and think about this on a giant scale and thinking about everyone. Start with yourself. Have a look at your diary today, tomorrow, and Friday, just the rest of this week. Where is your space to think and where is your space to be flexible? And try and I encourage you to put those things in your diary to make sure they're diarized. Because if they're not in your diary, someone else will come in and kind of put something in instead, I found. So yeah, think carefully about how you boundary your time. And then the next topic I wanted to talk about is morale and motivation. If you've been to my presentations before, I like thinking about how our mood changes throughout the day or throughout the week. And working remotely, we are more likely to feel alone with our work. Normally when I'm in the office, I'm still the only person that does my job. I'm the head of a department of one person still. But I have colleagues around me. When I have a problem, when I have a question about, I don't know, something that I'm not very good at, paperwork, finances, things like that, I have colleagues around me that I can ask their advice of very easily, very quickly. I can't do that so easily anymore. And it's hard for me to reach out to ask for that support sometimes. And you have to think about different personality types. I am quite an outgoing person, so it might not be that difficult for me to ring someone up or just start a Teams call with them and ask them a favor or ask them a question. But for other people who are more introverted or who feel more scared with those kind of asking for help interactions, that's going to be really, really difficult. So we might have to think of ways of allowing people to ask us for help, allowing people to ask us questions. Kimberly says, such low morale, really difficult to keep motivated throughout the day, and then being upset with myself when I don't get enough work done later. I, with all the love in the world, human beings are my favorite creatures, but we just do such hard things to ourselves sometimes. When life is hard for us, we blame ourselves first. And I think that that can be really, really difficult. And I really feel what you're saying there, Kimberly. If I have a bad day where my morale's low, it means I don't get as much work done. I then blame myself. And guess what happens to my morale and my mood? It dips even further. Um, Someone said privately here, that has never been acknowledged, and no support for single people who have other problems during lockdown as well. Yeah. Someone here saying our main customer is going through a restructure and expecting funding cuts of up to 80% with very little engagement with suppliers. This has massive negative impact on morale. Yeah, we're talking about things, but we're not talking about how we feel about them. Someone else agreeing, Kimberly, that is such a relatable comment. Yeah, it really is. Lots of people agreeing with you there. So, relationships are more difficult. It's harder for me to bond with my colleagues. I have colleagues now that I've never met and might never meet because of the ability for us to recruit much wider. That's great, but it means I'm not going to have random encounters with that person. I might not get to know them socially as well. Yes, of course, we'll still have a professional relationship, but a lot is done in many organizations where that professional and personal relationship combines, where we have things in common, where we understand each other a bit better, and we can really, start predicting each other's thoughts and really getting on the same page together. We're missing that a little bit. How about arranged social time? A few of you have mentioned this in the comments about kind of quizzes or after work drinks and stuff like that. I think we did too much of that too soon. We did it right at the beginning when we didn't really need it and we weren't starved of the social contact. We had lockdowns, but it was spring and summer. I was still seeing my friends outside. I was still getting to meet with people and spend some time with others. Now we need it the most, but we're burnt out from doing it before. My opinion is we need more of this arranged social time with our colleagues. Um, Lots of people here saying they're interested in the podcast. I'm not sure which podcast someone's mentioned, but podcast about procrastination. Yeah, procrastination is linked to perfectionism. Absolutely. Um, so we're trying to make sure people make lunch breaks by blocking time in their diaries. Leadership led by example. That's good. Yeah, really, really useful. It's interesting as well that this arranged social time. Yeah, it feels a bit weird and a bit annoying, but it's so powerful. Even just knowing what my colleagues are going through. We had a clinical meeting last Saturday. Sometimes Saturday is the only time we can get a load of people together. And just seeing lots of my colleagues' faces that I haven't seen for a long time brightened up my day. Um, as a group of counsellors and psychotherapists, many of us got our first dose of our vaccine last week because we were finally recognised as kind of social care workers, so we can start to see our clients in face to face again. And just having a community-led conversation about how that experience was really beautiful for me, just to hear other people's experience. So yeah, trying to get that arranged social time back in place, I think, is really important. Group morale is improved when we speak to each other early in the day. That's why I wanted to set this presentation for as early in the day as possible without being uncomfortable for those with childcare. It's really important that we have conversations with other people early in the day. Team meetings should be first thing if possible. I think that really helps me to engage in the rest of my day, because what it does is it helps me to put things in order. It helps me to think, my colleague's over there doing that, my colleague's over there doing that. At least I get a mental map of what's going on, rather than feeling like I'm swimming in nothingness. Again, for those of you that have been to my presentations before, I like the existential philosophical approach. So swimming in nothingness can be quite productive, yes, but it can also be terrifying and anxiety provoking. It can also make me do that thing where when anything goes wrong, all I do is blame myself. I haven't spoken to other people yet today, so I don't feel I can reach out for help. I don't feel I can start appointing blame elsewhere if I need to. I take it all on myself, and that can be really hard for my motivation and morale. Ali said, I booked in coffee breaks with people diaries every Wednesday at 3 p.m. If you don't have one, you can set one up. I love that. I love the idea of just reaching out to a colleague that I've got no real work reason to speak to, but I just haven't spoken to them in a while, and getting a coffee date in the diary. Really, really beautiful way of just catching up. And you'll find that work stuff improves because of it. Work conversations come out of it. Even just you understanding a little bit what someone else is going through in their role can help you adjust how you work with them. And Andrew says we have optional drop-in sessions on Wednesday at 5 p.m. where people can log in and chat regarding anything. A few optional quiz nights as well, trying not to be too forced. That's it. I think there's a little bit of Britishness in there as well. We don't like forcing fun too much, so we just kind of push the boundaries a little bit. I think we just got to get back into the habit of doing these social things online. They're not as good as doing them in person, but they give us something. And then finally, this is one that a lot of my private clients and other people have talked to me about is how do we share success? I'm working really hard here. No one can see me working really hard. Well, I'm lucky. People get to see the hard work I do. I get to give presentations like this, but many of you will be working and it might feel like your hard work is going unnoticed and unseen. Yes, we might have an email round once a week or once a month to share the successes of the organization. I think we need meetings. When something's gone really well, we need to get as many people in a room together and cheer about it and smile with each other and be pleased for each other. I don't think an email is enough to share success. A few people agreeing with me there as well. A workplace is a community. Communities work by us helping each other out and understanding each other's needs. Yeah, I'm over here doing this bit which I know supports these people, etc., etc. We need to talk more so that we understand that, and that can help our morale and motivation rise a little bit as well. And that beats procrastination a little bit too. I know where to go with my problems. I often procrastinate when I feel I've got a problem and I don't know where to go to solve it. Someone mentioning earlier about that, but procrastination being linked to perfectionism. I don't want to start because I don't know how it's going to finish. Someone here privately saying most of the online social things are organized by extroverts and are very unappealing in their format to introverts. That's a really interesting point of view. Thanks for sharing that. The one-on-one coffee probably works better for introverts. So let's offer small group or individual meetings as well. A company that we do some work with mentioned something they're doing the other day, which is they've got a list of everyone in the organization and they'll just randomly set up a half an hour meeting with 6 of them and just drop them into a call together and say, chat about anything. I think that's really cool. Again, I'm an extrovert. As an introvert, that might be terrifying. That might be really anxiety provoking. So you might want to make it optional. But I think if you can sign up for something like that or say, how large of a group would you be happy to be in or something like that? Yeah. We found key to encouraging people book the ad hoc coffee catch up one-to-one. People feel uncomfortable doing this remote. Oh, okay. Yeah. That's interesting. You would have no problem bumping into someone in the workplace and just saying, hey, do you fancy a coffee? But it's hard to motivate yourself to reach out to them and book it in their diary. So organizations might want to facilitate that a little bit. Yeah, interesting. Thank you, guys. Really good points on this morale and motivation. The other thing, I would be remiss if I didn't mention mental health as a mental health professional. So we're seeing a change in our levels of anxiety. We've covered this in a lot of the previous webinars, so I won't go into too much detail, but this uncertainty of not being in control. When we can't plan, we feel uncomfortable and helpless. I don't know what's going to happen next month or the month after that, or even less after that. So that can feel really uncomfortable for my animal brain, and that spikes my anxiety. I might feel stress. The bigger the change, the bigger the stress I'm in. So if I was working remotely a bit before the pandemic, I might be less stressed by this. This might be more in my skill set. How about if I was working in the office every day before the pandemic, then suddenly I'm working at home every day and I've got childcare to deal with. Imagine the change in stress levels going on there. It's just so much stuff out of our control. It can be really hard. Someone says privately here, that picture sums it all up. Yeah, I love this picture. This is how my brain, I'm so used to being on a computer these days. My brain has started to feel like a browser. Yeah, and when I've got too many tabs open, it just chunks and goes slowly. So yeah, I'm glad you like this picture. I stole it from Google Images. I didn't make it. Depression. We are in the perfect storm of depression. symptoms at the moment. We've got loneliness, high stress, anxiety, and that makes depression much more likely, especially when we throw in that existential feeling of powerlessness, where I don't feel I'm in control to support my life. I don't feel I can do anything to make things better. Social needs are not being met. We're designed to be with other people. I am getting joy just from seeing the 10 or so of you I can see on screen right now. I'm getting a great amount of joy and enjoyment from that. I'm not getting that every single day. Even the tech we use tries to replicate social interaction as much as possible. That's how important we know it is to our well-being. So think about how much of this you could do. We might need to do more of this because it doesn't quite meet our social needs, or we might need to be very well boundaried about it so that we only get it when we really need it, especially when I'm talking about social interaction online in our personal lives, because those calls can drag on for hours and hours and be a little less enjoyable than actually just something shorter. I'm going to pick up a couple of comments here. Ali's saying their organization has weekly yoga, Pilates, and HIIT classes. Brilliant idea to break up your day. Yeah, absolutely. Someone saying, Zora saying, we also have set up a coffee morning each day each week. Even if we can't always go to it, it's there for anyone who can or want to. We try to have an hour a day where we don't book any meetings. However, it doesn't always work out that way. I found I wasn't getting out all of the some days where I was so busy. Yeah, it's interesting as well because we do need to encourage the flexibility that we have with all the changes in our working practices. So it's a bit of a mix between setting things in our diary and allowing ourselves to be flexible. And the best way of doing this is by being in control. This last bit here, power. Some of us have adjusted well and are enjoying the flexibility. We feel more in control of our working lives. But the only way to do this is to have strong boundaries. It's that therapist's favorite word again, boundaries. Have strong boundaries and a good routine. Those are the only ways we're going to be able to manage that. So start looking at your diary now and thinking, is there any routine in there? Because to support our health and well-being, we need it. We are more able to care for ourselves with a routine. We can more easily develop positive habits, and we don't slip into those automatic negative mindset things of blaming ourselves or looking negatively at our own experiences. So think personally. Close your eyes if it helps you think about yourself easier. Because sometimes if you're looking at me or looking at each other, have a think. What routines have you lost since working remotely? It could be physical exercise. It could be time for mindfulness or just closing your eyes and having time alone. It could be social things that you're really missing out on. Yeah. Have a think about, are you sitting comfortably? How does your body feel? Are you comfortable? Are you doing all of this from a comfortable place in your home? Or do you need to think a bit more carefully about how to get it to suit you a bit better? What we need for our health and well-being, it's so boring and it keeps coming up, but it's good boundaries and a good routine. We need a start time for the day. I had one today. I don't have an end time this evening. I know I've got a lot of work to catch up on. I'm allowing myself to be a bit flexible there because I know I've got a scheduled break in my diary today. I know I'm going to eat meals during the same time frame that I should, and I'm going to get some exercise this evening. So the more of these I have, out of these 5 things, I can be flexible. I can be flexible on my start time and my end time if I've got the rest of those things. Or I can be flexible on my exercise or my scheduled breaks if I've got the other things in place because I know I'll be able to fit them in. Does that make sense? Yeah. The more of these that we have, the more flexible and resilient that we can be. Because you throw something at me today that's a huge piece of exciting, interesting work, sure, I can get rid of my end time, but I know when I'm going to get my breaks, I know when I'm going to get my meals, and I know I'm going to get some exercise in my diary. So that end time can drag on as late as I want sometimes. So think carefully about getting as many of these as possible. I'm just going to pick up a couple of your comments here. I'm going to scroll back up because you're sending so many great ones. So someone's saying, Ali, the exercise classes really make me down tools at a certain time when otherwise I'd definitely work through lunch and it lifts my mood. Yeah, an exercise class is great because it's social, it's with other people. There's a little bit of social pressure to take part and do well, but it also means that we have to turn everything off. Obviously, except for the screen that we're using for the exercise class, don't turn that one off. Someone said privately, I feel that I'm developing a video on personality and a video off personality, which would be less pronounced if I was in the office. That's really interesting. We do all wear masks, we do all put personalities on when we're around other people. But it's interesting that you've noticed that they're more pronounced working online. That's a really cool thing to pick up on. Um, there is a difference between extroverts and introverts, though, absolutely. I've had more discussion about extrovertedness and introvertedness than I've ever had in my career at all for this time being. We have to think carefully about that. Someone saying privately, I wonder if the conversation will open up around OCD, that's obsessive compulsive disorder, as a result of how people are coping or struggling with changes of behavior. That's an interesting one, too. Um, of course, the lockdown is extreme, but there are some upsides. A bit more flexibility on working hours and able to pick up some family responsibilities. No commute. Most people are not looking to go back into the office full time. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think what you've said there privately is having a lot of these things in place: the start time, end time, breaks, meals, and exercise. As long as we've got those, we can be flexible with them a little bit. Someone saying here, Angela saying, it's also really exhausting trying to carry everyone else's stress, kids with A levels and uni anxieties. Yeah, God, I had a session with a group of young people a couple of weeks ago, and I had not seen this pandemic from their point of view yet. I'll admit I don't spend a lot of time speaking to young people anymore, but my goodness, are they in a tough situation, not knowing what the next year or 2 years is going to be from them, especially when all through your schooling career, everything is planned out for you. And all of a sudden, those plans are gone and you have no idea what your future holds. That's really, really tough. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Lots of people really relating to those comments. Thank you. Um, Someone saying, here's something interesting. I only realized I was an introvert through lockdown. It totally reshaped and how kind I was able to be to myself. I love self-kindness. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Sometimes for being snappy or tired. Yeah, really interesting, guys. We have to skip on because I see we're running low of time. I wanted to put back in a slide that I did on my winter lockdown presentation recently. Just watch out for these traps, because all of these traps go against these things that we need to put in place to have routine and predictability. So worrying about things we can't control, rumination, worrying about the past, what if I'd done X, Y, and Z, speculation in the media and social media, unhealthily comparing myself to other people. The amount of dreams I've had about living in Australia or New Zealand at the moment is unfathomable. I'm comparing myself to those countries all the time. Giving up, just neglecting myself, not caring for myself, withdrawing from social contact, losing my independence. I still do have quite a lot of independence in my life, but I can just give up. Mm. I have to watch out for excess and burnout from having a lack of boundaries. I think it's really important we watch out for these things. I'll make sure that a copy of these slides and a recording is available to all of you afterwards so you can have a look back at these. So, top tips. I shared this before. It still remains the same. Keep learning. We need to do new things. Remember, if we get a really good routine in place, we can set time aside for learning and doing new things. And what learning does is it puts us back in power, back in control. We're connected and involved, and we adapt to and change and find meaning in our lives. One way that we really normally learn when we're all in an office together is we have to interact, we have to be unpredictable, we have to be flexible, and that helps us to learn. When all the focus is on us and our little home office, we do less learning. Consistent learning has been shown to prevent depression. So start small, read a new book or research something you've been curious about. It's really good for our self-confidence and it fights boredom too. Someone's saying here that they can't find them in Outlook. So for those of you that don't know, this is a mixed session. So there are going to be people from all organizations here. So you might not work together. So some people saying about wonderful yoga classes and stuff, it might not be available in your organizations. That might be, I probably should have explained that at the start. But if you see something that you like the sound of here, don't be afraid to suggest it to your company. If it's working well for others, it might work well for you guys. And then finally, kindness and compassion. Give it to receive it. Caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it's self-preservation, and it's an act of political warfare. I need to look after myself. I can't do the stuff I do for other people if I'm not well. So I must be able to look after myself. Yes, kindness to others with friends and families in our community is important. It boosts serotonin and endorphins. It makes us feel satisfied and it reduces anxiety. Because if I'm helping other people, I must be okay. What it can also do is it can hide the fact that I'm not okay and I'm helping others to avoid looking at the fact that I'm not okay. So in order to have that kindness for others, we need kindness to ourselves. We need to be honest. We need to acknowledge what's been difficult for us, and we need to acknowledge what our needs are. And then we need to treat ourselves with kindness. Fulfill those needs. If you need something social, find it. If you need something new and exciting, find it. Give yourself time to do it. Don't just let work bleed into everything so that you don't have time to look after yourself or be kind to yourself. Because if I can listen to my thoughts, understand what I need, and then give myself those needs, my body and brain feels much more in control. It's a complete antidote to the fear and anxiety of the pandemic because I know that I can respond to what I need personally. I stop worrying about what's going on in New Zealand, what's going on in the government in this country, because I don't need to know all of that every day. All I need to know is what this needs, what care this needs at the moment. Give yourself permission to enjoy things too. I've heard a lot of this unhealthy comparison saying, oh, I can't worry about anything. There's people much worse off. There's always people worse off and there's always people better off. But there's no one but you that you can look after best. So pay attention to your needs. That's my evangelism for the day over. Okay. But this is a really important topic that we're missing out on. And then finally, you will get bored of these if you keep coming to my presentations, but you still might not be doing some of them. Sleep is a life raft. Rest, recuperation, our body and brain getting all that it needs while we sleep is really important. And it starts first thing in the morning. It is 10:48 here in the UK. If any of you have not had any water today, go and get some after this presentation. We need to be well hydrated at the moment. So when we get up in the morning, first thing, something small to eat and a big glass of water. The other one I'll touch on, and I'll let you read the rest at your own speed, is number 7. Just breathe. Reminds me to breathe a little bit. It's been a bit of a full session, this one, but I want to give some time for some questions at the end. So learning how to breathe optimally. Look up some breathing exercises. There's great podcasts on it. There's BBC have just put out some great mental health resources, particularly for those of you with young children. The BBC bite-sized mental health stuff is beautiful and brilliant, and it gives them a way of engaging with their thoughts and feelings around the pandemic. I recommend anyone with young children give it a go. But if we can do this breathing exercise, I said last week I had my first shot of the I keep saying antidote vaccine. I had my first shot of the vaccine last week, and I had a bit of a difficult evening, feeling a bit feverish. Breathing is what got me through it. Just controlling my breathing and paying attention to that lets your brain do much less panicking. Yeah. And yeah, Anna said here, it's incredible how we don't realize a lot of us are shallow breathing all day. Fill your belly with breath and it feels great. I have not got the most open sinuses in the world, as you can hear by the tone of my voice and my breathing, but it doesn't matter. It's powerful. Um, oh, someone said here, what may I ask what's wrong with checking the time if you wake up at the night? I always do that and I'd not realized it wasn't available. If you do it and you fall straight back asleep, fine. That means you don't have a big problem with it. Carry on. These don't apply 100% to everyone all the time. The problem with checking the time in the night is you might start worrying about all the time that you're going to have left or whatever, or you might start checking your phone, looking at messages, replying to messages, things like that. So this is all based on a scientific sleep study that showed on average those that check the time when they wake in the middle of the night will take about up to an hour to fall asleep, average of 50 minutes, 50. Those who didn't check the time fell asleep on average 5 to 10 minutes. So it's a huge, huge difference. It just stops your brain worrying and stuff like that. But if you can wake up, look at the time, not worry about it and fall back asleep, absolutely fine. That tip's not for you. But make sure you pay attention to all the others instead then. So for those of you that are members of CiC Support, don't forget to look at our website, wellonline.co.uk. You'll all have a shared login and password for your organisation. So I suggest either speaking to HR or just giving us a call to find out what that login and password is. All of our tip sheets, advice about the legal and financial support and the mental health support, the counselling that we can give you. Next week, We have a fantastic, no, next week, 8th of March. Gosh, I'm not even sure what day it is today. So anyway, on the 8th of March, we have got a complimentary wellbeing boot camp. I'm going to paste this link. Can I do that? No. I'm going to try and paste this link into the chat so you can all copy it. The more the merrier. You do not have to be an EAP subscriber to sign up to this wellbeing boot camp. Anyone can join. You can send it to your friends, your family, the people you love, the people you hate, whoever you want it to go to. I'm going to put a link to it. Oh, my colleague Emma is way ahead of me and has already done that. Thank you very much, Emma. That's very kind of you. There's a couple of links in the chat there now. Please do go and sign up. We're going to have 5 days of basically different well-being tasks. We're going to give you little exercises and tasks to do, starting with sleep, stress, then acts of kindness, gratitude, and maintaining connections, which is a lot of what this presentation has been about. Oh, Anna says you just bought that book. I think you mean this one, Tired But Wired by Narina Ramakant. For those of you that didn't see the title of it, it's here, Tired But Wired by Dr. Ramakant. I have stolen all her tips here, so if anyone buys her book as a result of it, I'm sure I will be absolved of my theft. So starting on the 8th of March, please do go and sign up. It's, oh, the Matthew Walker book. Oh, okay, yeah, that's a good one. So please do go and sign up for this, and don't forget to get in touch with us if you need some support. We are here for you. I want plenty of time for questions and answers, although I've only left us about 10 minutes to do so. Please do get your questions into the chat. Please feel free to answer them privately. There's a lot of us here, so I won't get through to all of them, but hopefully I will do next time. I really, really want to extend my thanks to you guys for showing up and taking part so much today. The next webinar we have, our March webinar, I'm going to release the date and time of it soon. It's going to be informed by a lot of the stuff we've talked about today. I think we're mainly going to look at topics around introverts, extroverts, people with disabilities, people who are finding it a bit more difficult during the pandemic. We're going to focus on tools and tips for people who are feeling that kind of thing, because I've heard from a lot of you today that that's going on, and I want to make sure that we put some real customized tools and tips together for you. If you've got all that you can from the webinar and you've got to go other places and you prefer a 7-minute break before your likely next meeting at 11 o'clock, go for it. If you want to stick around and ask some questions, I'm here for the next 10 minutes or so. Someone has said, please see my private post. If you could send it to me again, I've only got a tiny little screen with the chat, so I'm trying to keep up with it. If you don't mind sending it to me again, I'd really appreciate it. A couple of people saying thank you. That's really kind. I really wanted to talk about this topic. I think there have been a lot of changes that we haven't spoken about much throughout the pandemic, and you guys have really helped us talk about those. Thank you for the session. Oh, that's really kind, really helpful and informative. It's put you in a good mood for the rest of the day. That's really good. So the person who asked me, oh, there we are. I find myself staying up later and later at night because I know I don't have to get up to do the commute. It's really affecting my health mentally and physically, but I can't get self-control over it. First of all, no need to punish yourself over that. If you're going to bed late, but you're also able to wake up later and get to work, that's fine for now. If you want to adjust that, just do it small bits at a time. So often as human beings, we try and do it all at once. I think I shouldn't be going to bed at 1 in the morning. I should be going at 10 p.m. So what do? I try and get into bed at 10 p.m. the next day. And of course, I'm not tired because I went to sleep much later the night before. So just do it in increments, nice and slowly. Just bite back 10 or 15 minutes at a time. Yeah? And if you fail, that's fine. These things are not an upward trajectory. They go up and down all the time. Yeah? I learned this a lot. A couple of years ago, I had a real bad injury to my shoulder, and the physio said something that really stuck with me. They said, we're going to do things that are going to make it better, but along the way, it might also get a bit worse sometimes. That's okay. That's natural. Don't treat your arm like it's not part of you, like it's different. It's part of you. Be kind to it and compassionate to it. I'd say the same with your sleep. Be kind to your energy levels and compassionate with them. Make sure you're eating breakfast and having water first thing in the morning and doing all you can to have a bit of a sleep routine in the evening. Try different things as well. I found a shower really helps me before bed, getting clean, and then I can get into bed, I can relax a little bit, and I'll start to drift off usually. Lots of people saying they've found it useful. Someone saying, how long is the boot camp for? So it's 5 days, And it's not sessions, it's not all hours long, it's just an email that you'll get every day for 5 days with tools and tips around that topic and a couple of exercises to do. So that's all it is. It's no time that you need. It doesn't need to go in your diary. You just sign up and we'll get in touch with you by email about all the details. Lots of people saying it was useful. That's really good. Not getting much sleep because of my 13-month-old. Someone says privately, any tips on looking after myself with sleep deprivation? Yeah, I'm going to go back to the same thing. Be kind to yourself. Take sleep and rest wherever you can, and tell people. Speak to your colleagues, your manager if you can, your HR department in your organization if you have one. Let people know that this is going on. Don't try and handle it alone, because you will need the flexibility, understanding, and support of other people so that you can rest a bit more during the day, perhaps. Sarah says, where do we find details for the next seminar? If you've signed up for this one with your email address, you'll be on the mailing list for the next one, so should be absolutely fine. But otherwise, wherever you found out about this one, you'll find out about the next one. We send out a mail out for them all. Lots of people saying thank you, that's so kind. Are you able to share the deck? Yeah, again, if you signed up with your email address, I'll send a copy of the slides and the recording as well. Someone's saying here, it is hard to concentrate on work with constant interruptions going on in the house. Any tips for regaining concentration? The best thing to do is to set really good boundaries. If I know that I need a couple of hours into uninterrupted, then I need to start working towards getting a couple of hours uninterrupted. I can't train myself to be better with distractions. Distractions are natural. But what I need to be able to do, like I have to do, I need an hour to give this presentation. I need this room because it's the private, quiet room in the flat. So I need to tell the people that I live with, I need this room for this hour and not be interrupted. Is there anything you need from me now so I don't have to do it for you then? That kind of conversation is really useful. If the kids don't understand that because they're too young, then lean on other people around you for that kind of support, because you need to be able to get some uninterrupted time. Otherwise, you're just going to be under that pressure the whole time. Lots of people saying thank you. That's really kind. Probably got time for one more question. Oh, someone just says, thank you, really useful. Just blocked off 1 hour in a work calendar for lunch or walk for the next 2 months. Brilliant. If you can get into good habits of self-care now. I mean, I couldn't shut the blinds today, even though it ruins my camera. Look at that beautiful sunshine today. If you can get into good habits of looking after yourself now, come spring and summer, when we're allowed out, hopefully a bit more, you'll be feeling well enough to do it. If you're not looking after yourself now, spring and summer will come around and you might not feel motivated to enjoy it so much. So yeah, really get into good habits now. I'm glad that lots of you found this really interesting and useful. I really appreciate it. Just checking to see if there's any more questions. No, it doesn't look so. All right. Well, look, guys, thank you so much for your interaction and being part of this. I really, really appreciate it. Oh, someone just finally added, we've all had a new routine and as a family are fitter and eating well. Brilliant. Yeah. If you've got a family at home, get them involved in the routine as well. If you're all eating at the same time, you're all resting at the same time, if you're all dancing, singing, playing at the same time, it's going to feel much more wholesome. That's a great note to leave it on. Thank you for that positive note. I really appreciate it. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Don't forget to drink some water and have a break today at least. Have a look at getting those things in place: a start time, an end time, scheduled breaks, regular meals. Thank you very much. Speak to you all very, very soon.